In a world where ambition and authenticity collide, a humble wellness shop, steeped in hope and resilience, becomes the unlikely stage for an encounter that defies all expectations. Rose Bennett, whose life is dedicated to healing and sustainability, finds herself face-to-face with Alexander Peterson, a billionaire whose polished success masks a deep, unspoken yearning for genuine connection. In that charged moment, business negotiations melt away into tender vulnerability, transforming a billion-dollar proposal into an invitation to build a life of purpose and profound love. As their worlds merge, the line between profit and passion blurs. Can the relentless drive for success ever be reconciled with the raw, transformative power of the human heart? Stay with me as we unravel a story where every decision carries the weight of destiny, and where the most unexpected proposals reveal the deepest truths of our souls. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to Heartbeat Narratives, your ultimate destination for all things romances, connection, and heartfelt stories. I'm thrilled to have you here, sharing this amazing journey of exploring love in all its beautiful, complex, and magical forms. Whether you're a hopeless romantic, someone searching for relationship insights, or just love diving into heartwarming content, you're exactly where you need to be. If you're enjoying what you see, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected with our Heartbeat Narratives community. Drop a like to show some love, support, and motivation. Share this video with someone who might need a little romance in their life. Your support means the world to me and helps us continue creating content that celebrates love, connection, and the beautiful stories that bring us together. The sleek black Bentley glided to a stop outside the modest storefront with its hand-painted sign, Rose's Natural Wellness. Inside, Rose Bennett arranged the last of her homemade essential oil blends on reclaimed wood shelving. At 32, she had poured her life savings into today's grand opening, representing everything she believed in: natural healing, sustainable practices, and community wellness. The shop bell chimed, and Rose looked up to see a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit standing in the doorway. She recognized him instantly from countless magazine covers: Alexander Peterson, CEO of Peterson Global Enterprises. Ms. Bennett. His voice was deep, refined, yet approachable. I hope I'm not intruding. Rose smoothed down her simple linen dress. Mr. Peterson, this is unexpected. What brings you to my little shop? Alexander's steel blue eyes surveyed the space with genuine interest. I've been following your work for some time. Your research on plant-based wellness solutions is impressive. Rose blinked in surprise. Her academic papers had barely made a ripple in scientific circles, let alone caught the attention of someone like Alexander Peterson. Your integration of traditional healing practices with modern scientific methodology is exactly what the health industry needs, he continued, examining a shelf of hand-blended teas. The market is ready for disruption, and your approach has significant potential. Thank you, but I can't imagine my small operation is of interest to Peterson Global. Alexander smiled, revealing a warmth that seldom appeared in his public persona. On the contrary, I'm here to offer you a proposal, a billion-dollar contract to scale your wellness concept nationally, possibly globally. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I'm sorry, did you say $1 billion? I did. He handed her a document. This is just an initial term sheet. My team has projected the potential growth of your wellness concept over 5 years. Rose scanned the astronomical figures, her hands trembling slightly. Why me? She finally asked. There are established wellness brands you could acquire for far less. Alexander moved toward the window before turning back to her. Those established brands lack innovation. They lack heart. Your approach combines scientific rigor with genuine compassion. That's rare, Ms. Bennett. In today's market, authenticity is the most valuable commodity there is. For a moment, Rose was speechless. Her dream had always been to help people on a meaningful scale, but she had assumed it would take decades of slow growth to reach even a fraction of the audience this opportunity promised. This is overwhelming, she admitted. I would need time to consider such an offer. Of course, Alexander nodded. Perhaps we could discuss it over dinner tomorrow? As he turned to leave, Rose found her voice again. Mr. Peterson, what happens to my vision if I accept? Would I still have creative control? A genuine smile crossed his face. "That's exactly why I'm interested, Ms. Bennett. Your vision is what makes this valuable. I'm not looking to change it. I'm looking to amplify it." 3 months later, Rose stood in her new office, 40 stories above Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a reminder of how far she had come from her small storefront. When she had signed a contract with Peterson Global, she had insisted on several non-negotiable terms: sustainable sourcing, fair wages for workers, and continued research into plant-based healing compounds. To her surprise, Alexander hadn't just agreed. He had expanded on her vision. "The market research just came in," Alexander announced, striding into her office with a tablet. His usual formal attire had given way to a cashmere sweater and tailored slacks. "Your new stress relief blend is testing through the roof. We should move up the launch date." Rose smiled, reviewing the data. "People are connecting with the story behind it, how my grandmother used these herbs during the Depression." "Authenticity sells," Alexander agreed. "But it's more than that. People trust you, Rose." Their working relationship had evolved quickly from formal to collaborative. Alexander had a brilliant mind for business strategy, while Rose brought the creativity and scientific knowledge that made their products unique. What had surprised her most was his willingness to listen. When she pushed back against cost-cutting measures that would compromise quality, he didn't overrule her. He found alternative solutions. Late nights reviewing contracts turned into conversations about their backgrounds. Rose learned that Alexander had built his empire from a small tech startup he'd founded in college. Despite his wealth, he lived relatively modestly, channeling most of his fortune into philanthropic ventures the press rarely covered. She found herself sharing stories of her childhood in rural Vermont, where her grandmother had taught her to identify medicinal plants. The partnership faced its first major test 6 months in, when a large pharmaceutical company offered to buy them out for twice what Alexander had initially invested. "They'll dismantle everything we built," she argued during a tense board meeting. "Our commitment to sustainability, our employee welfare programs, those will be the first things to go when they look to maximize profits." All eyes turned to Alexander, whose vote would effectively decide the matter. "I agree with Rose," he said finally. "We're building something with long-term value here, not just a quick profit." The offer is declined. Later, in the privacy of his office, Rose confronted him. "You could have made billions from that deal. Why turn it down?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city. "When I approached you in your shop that day, it wasn't just about business. I believed in your vision. I still do." He turned to face her. "Some things are worth more than a quick return on investment." That evening marked a subtle shift in their relationship. As they worked late, Rose found herself noticing details she had overlooked before. The way Alexander's eyes crinkled when he smiled genuinely, how he remembered how she took her tea, the thoughtful questions he asked about her research. Their partnership had developed into something neither had anticipated, a deep friendship based on mutual respect and shared purpose. By the end of their first year working together, Rose's natural wellness had expanded to 300 retail locations, with an online presence that reached customers globally. What had begun as a business arrangement had blossomed into a powerful collaboration that was redefining the wellness industry. Yet neither Rose nor Alexander fully recognized how profoundly they had begun to influence each other's lives beyond the boardroom. 3. Personal connection deepens. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as Rose was concluding a product development meeting. Her sister's voice sounded thin with worry. "Mom's in the hospital, Rose. They're saying it might be serious." Rose's world contracted to that single sentence. Her mother, Elaine, had always been a picture of health. The woman who had hiked the Appalachian Trail at 60 and still taught yoga classes 3 times a week. The diagnosis was devastating. Advanced pancreatic cancer that had spread to her liver. The prognosis was measured in months, not years. Rose canceled her meetings and booked the first flight to Vermont. As she hurriedly packed her bags, her phone rang. It was Alexander. "I heard about your mother," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm so sorry, Rose." She hadn't told anyone at the office yet. Only her assistant knew the reason for her sudden departure. "The doctors are saying it's advanced. I need to be there, but there's a Tokyo deal and the new product launch. Stop, Alexander interrupted softly. The business can wait. Your mother can't. Take all the time you need. His understanding brought unexpected tears to her eyes. In the corporate world she had entered, personal crises were often treated as inconvenient interruptions to business. Alexander's response was human, compassionate. In the small regional hospital where her mother was being treated, Rose found herself facing the limitations of local health care. 3 days after her arrival, she was startled to see Alexander walking down the hospital corridor toward her. "Alex, what are you doing here?" He handed her a coffee, prepared exactly how she liked it. "I thought you could use this. And some company." Rose explained her mother's condition, the limited treatment options, and her own growing sense of helplessness. Alexander listened attentively, asking occasional questions that revealed a surprising knowledge of medical terminology. "My father died of pancreatic cancer when I was in college," he explained when she commented on this. "I learned more about oncology than I ever wanted to know." This personal revelation, something she had never read in any profile or interview, shifted something in Rose's perception of him. "The doctors here are doing their best," Rose continued, "but the most promising clinical trials are impossible to get into, and the experimental treatments aren't covered by insurance." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Would you be open to a second opinion? I know someone at Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the leading pancreatic cancer researchers in the country." Within 48 hours, Elaine Bennett was being evaluated by a team of specialists at one of the nation's top cancer centers. Alexander had not only arranged a consultation, but had also organized private transportation and accommodations near the hospital. When Rose tried to thank him, he waved away her gratitude. "You would do the same for anyone you cared about," he said. The new treatment plan offered no miracles, but provided something precious: time and hope. As Elaine began an innovative combination therapy, Rose found herself commuting between New York and her mother's treatment center. Alexander restructured board meetings around her schedule and often handled presentations she would normally give. During this difficult period, he became a regular visitor at the hospital, bringing books for Elaine and taking genuine interest in her stories. Rose's mother, initially suspicious of the billionaire who had swept her daughter into his business world, gradually warmed to him. "He's not what I expected," Elaine confided during one of her better days. They were sitting in the hospital garden, enjoying rare autumn sunshine. "When you first told me about him, I pictured some cold corporate type only interested in profits." Rose smiled, watching Alexander across the garden as he took a business call. "He surprised me, too. The way he looks at you," her mother continued, with the directness that illness had intensified. "That's not how a business partner looks at someone." "Mom, it's not like that," Rose protested, feeling a flush rise to her cheeks. Elaine raised a skeptical eyebrow, but said nothing more. That evening, as Alexander drove Rose back to her apartment, she found herself studying his profile in the dim light of the car. "I can feel you thinking," he said, not taking his eyes off the road. "What's on your mind?" Rose hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Why are you doing all this?" "The specialist, the transportation, spending time with my family. None of this benefits the business." Alexander was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When they stopped at a red light, he turned to look at her directly. "Do you really not know?" he asked softly. The light turned green before she could respond, and the moment passed. But something had shifted between them, something neither was quite ready to name. As weeks turned into months, Elaine's condition stabilized enough for her to return home with visiting nurses. Alexander had quietly covered all expenses not included by insurance, despite Rose's initial protests. When she discovered the extent of his financial support, she confronted him in his office. "I can't accept this," she said, placing the hospital billing statements on his desk. "It's too much." Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Would it help if you considered a loan? That would still be millions of dollars, Alex. Then consider it an investment in someone I care about." He stood and walked around the desk to face her directly. "Rose, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me use some of it for something that matters. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. Why does my family matter to you? Because you matter to me, he said simply. More than I expected. More than I was prepared for. The admission hung in the air between them, neither willing to be the first to acknowledge its full implications. Instead, Rose found herself sharing more of her life with him, introducing him to her sister and nephews, including him in family dinners when her mother felt well enough for company. My parents were older when they had me, he explained one evening as they sat on the porch of Elaine's home. They were academics, brilliant, but not particularly demonstrative. When they died, I threw myself into building the company. It became my family, in a way. That sounds lonely, Rose observed. Alexander considered this. I never thought of it that way until recently. Success was always the goal. I never stopped to question whether it was enough. As Elaine's health stabilized into what the doctors called managed illness, Rose gradually resumed more of her professional responsibilities. But her relationship with Alexander had fundamentally changed. Their late-night strategy sessions now included personal conversations. Their text exchanges included jokes and observations unrelated to business. It was Elaine who finally addressed the elephant in the room. During a quiet moment when Alexander had stepped away from a family dinner, she took her daughter's hand. "Life is too short to pretend, Rose," she said, with the clarity that facing mortality brings. "That man loves you, and unless I'm completely losing my touch, you love him too." Rose started to deny it, then stop herself. The truth had been growing increasingly difficult to ignore. Somewhere between boardroom negotiations and hospital waiting rooms, between product launches and quiet conversations about dreams and fears, something profound had taken root. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came promising news. Elaine's latest scan showed a significant reduction in tumor size. The experimental treatment was working better than anyone had dared hope. To celebrate, Alexander suggested a weekend at his rarely used country house in the Berkshires. What Rose didn't know was that he had secretly invited her entire family, her mother, sister, brother-in-law, and nephews, to join them for Sunday lunch. "You look better than you have in months," her sister whispered as they prepared lunch together. "And it's not just Mom's good news." Rose glanced through the window to where Alexander was teaching her nephews how to skip stones across the small pond. He was laughing, more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Everything's just going well right now," Rose deflected. "The business is thriving. Mom's health is improving. And you're in love with him," her sister finished with a knowing smile. "It's written all over your face whenever you look at him." Rose didn't deny it this time. After lunch, as her family departed with warm hugs and meaningful glances, Alexander suggested a walk along a woodland path that wound through his property. The afternoon light filtered through the trees, casting dapple shadows on the path ahead of them. "Your family is wonderful," he said as they walked side by side. "Watching you with them, I understand better where your compassion comes from." Rose smiled. "They've certainly taken to you. Mom asks about you even when you're not around." "And what do you tell her?" Alexander asked, his tone light, but his eyes searching. Rose considered her answer carefully. "I tell her the truth, that you become one of the most important people in my life." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The businesslike manner he typically maintained had fallen away completely. "Rose, there's something I need to tell you," he began. "When I approached you in your shop 2 years ago, I had a clear business strategy in mind. I saw potential in your concept, an opportunity to diversify my holdings in a growing market." She nodded, unsure where this conversation was heading. "What I didn't anticipate," he continued, "was the way you would challenge every assumption I've built my life around. The way you would make me question whether success is measured in profit margins or in moments of genuine connection." Alexander took her hands in his. "These past 2 years, working with you, getting to know your family, facing challenges together, have been the most meaningful of my life. For the first time, I found something more valuable than any business I built." "I love you, Rose," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since that day in the hospital, when you were more concerned about missing a business meeting than about the fact that I'd rearranged specialists for your mother. Your priorities were so clear, so right, He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. When he opened it, Rose gasped. The ring inside featured a cluster of small stones arranged in a pattern that resembled a rose in bloom. Each stone was chosen for its meaning, Alexander explained. Emeralds for healing and compassion, sapphires for wisdom and loyalty, small diamonds for clarity and strength. Just like the woman I hope will wear it. He lowered himself to one knee. Rose Bennett, I came into your life offering a business partnership worth billions. Now I'm asking for something infinitely more valuable. Will you marry me? Yes, Rose whispered, tears blurring her vision. Yes, I will. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she added, but I have one condition. Alexander raised an eyebrow. A smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I should have known. What is it? That we continue to build something meaningful together. Not just a business, but a life that matters. He stood, drawing her into his arms. That's not a condition, Rose. That's a promise I intend to keep. When they returned to the house, Rose was surprised to find her family had not left after all. They were gathered in the living room, glasses of champagne already in hand. Her mother's eyes shone with happy tears as she took a ring on Rose's finger. You knew, Rose accused, laughing through her own tears. He asked for my blessing last week, Elaine confirmed, embracing her future son-in-law with genuine affection. I told him he was already family, but it was nice of him to make it official. Their engagement made headlines across business and society pages. Billionaire CEO finds love with wellness entrepreneur, proclaimed the New York Times. For a week, they were the subject of intense public interest, their story romanticized and scrutinized in equal measure. What the headlines missed was the depth behind their connection. The gradual building of trust, the shared vision that had drawn them together long before romance entered the equation. In the privacy of their home, away from the public's prying eyes, Rose and Alexander reflected on the unlikely path that had led them to each other. Do you believe in fate? Rose asked one evening as they sat on the terrace of their Manhattan penthouse, the city lights spreading below them like earthbound stars. Alexander considered the question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. I've always believed we create our own destinies through choice and action. But then again, what are the odds that I would walk into your shop on that particular day? Alexander had never fully explained what had drawn him to her small wellness store in the first place. When Rose pressed him on it, he smiled enigmatically. I read an article about innovative approaches to stress management in a medical journal. Your research was cited. When I discovered you had opened a store implementing your theories, I was intrigued. It seemed like kismet. I had been looking to diversify into wellness for months, and suddenly there you were, pioneering exactly the approach I believed in. As their wedding plans progressed, Rose insisted on simplicity and meaning over extravagance. They chose to hold the ceremony at her mother's home in Vermont, with only family and close friends in attendance. People expect the wedding of the decade, Alexander's longtime assistant commented during preparations. They're calling you the modern American royal couple. This sense of purpose, of creating something that matters beyond quarterly reports and market share. Their story became something of a modern fairy tale in business circles. The billionaire CEO who found love and purpose with the wellness entrepreneur who valued integrity over expansion. What few outside their intimate circle understood was how ordinary their extraordinary lives felt from the inside. Despite their wealth and influence, their happiest moments were remarkably simple. Family dinners with Elaine, whose health had stabilized into what doctors called an unexpected remission. Quiet evenings discussing ideas and dreams. Weekends at their Vermont property, watching Lily explore the same woodland paths where their love story had unfolded. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, they hosted a gathering for those who had been part of their journey. Family members, key employees, the doctors who had treated Elaine, even the landlord of Rose's original small shop. I'd like to propose a toast, Alexander said, standing to address the assembled guests. Not just a rose, though every day with her reinforces that asking her to marry me was the wisest decision I've ever made. He smiled at his wife, who returned his gaze with equal affection, but also to every person in this room who has been part of our story. He raised his glass. 5 years ago, many called our wedding the culmination of a modern fairy tale. But what I've learned is that the true story wasn't about a billionaire and a small business owner finding unlikely love. It was about two people discovering that success without connection is hollow, and that true wealth lies in the relationships we build and the positive change we create together. Rose joined him, taking his hand as she added her own thoughts. When Alexander walked into my shop that day with his billion-dollar proposal, I never imagined where that moment would lead. But looking back, I realized that what appeared to be a business opportunity was actually the beginning of something far more valuable, a partnership that would challenge both of us to grow in ways neither could have anticipated. As the evening progressed, Rose found a moment of quiet reflection. Watching Alexander deep in discussion with her mother about her latest community wellness initiative, she was struck by how completely their lives had intertwined. The boundaries between business and personal, between his world and hers, had dissolved into something new and stronger. Their story had begun with a proposal measured in billions, but its true value lay in what couldn't be quantified. The integrity they maintained even as they scaled their vision, the lives they touched through their work and philanthropy, the family they created, and the love that had grown from mutual respect into something profound and enduring. Whether it had been fate, coincidence, or simply good business instinct that had brought them together, what mattered was what they had created from that initial meeting. A partnership that transcended conventional boundaries, a love that enhanced rather than diminished their individual strengths, and a shared commitment to building something meaningful in the world. In the end, the greatest proposal Alexander had ever made wasn't the business offer that had first brought Rose into his life, but the ongoing invitation to build something together that would outlast them both, a legacy of compassion, integrity, and meaningful connection that no balance sheet could ever fully measure. "Then they'll be disappointed," Alexander replied firmly. "This isn't about putting on a show. It's about celebrating something real." This philosophy, prioritizing authenticity over appearance, had increasingly defined both their personal relationship and their business approach. Under their joint leadership, Rose's natural wellness had evolved beyond a successful company into a movement that championed genuine well-being over quick fixes. Their love story became something of a parable within the organization. Employees noted how Alexander, once known for his rigorous efficiency and detachment, now regularly asked about their families and personal well-being. Rose, who had once been hesitant to assert herself in corporate settings, had grown confident in challenging conventional business wisdom when it conflicted with their core values. "You've changed him," observed Thomas, Alexander's longtime CFO, during a charity gala. "In all the years I've known him, I've never seen him actually happy before." Rose watched Alexander across the room, deep in conversation with potential investors for their latest community wellness initiative. "We've changed each other," she corrected. "He's taught me to think bigger, to see possibilities I would have dismissed as unrealistic." "And you've taught him that success isn't measured solely in profit margins," Thomas nodded. "It's a good partnership." The word partnership captured the essence of what made their relationship work. Neither dominated. Both contributed their strengths. When they disagreed, which they still did, sometimes passionately, they approached the conflict as a problem to solve together rather than a battle to win. This dynamic was tested when, 3 months before their wedding, a major competitor made a hostile takeover attempt to their company. The attack was calculated and aggressive, targeting not just their market share, but their reputation. In the past, Alexander would have responded with equal aggression. Rose watched him carefully during the crisis meetings, noting the tension in his jaw, the old instincts visibly at war with his evolved perspective. "What do you think we should do?" he asked her privately after a particularly difficult strategy session. "Something they won't expect," Rose replied. "They're preparing for a conventional corporate battle. Let's respond with transparency instead." Rather than engaging in corporate warfare, they opened their supply chain to public scrutiny, invited independent auditors to verify their ethical practices, and doubled down on their community initiatives. The approach was risky, but it aligned with the values they had built their partnership upon. The gamble paid off. Customers rallied around the brand. Sales increased during what should have been a vulnerable period, and the attempted takeover eventually collapsed under the weight of public support for Rose and Alexander's vision. "We could have fought fire with fire," Rose reflected afterward. "It might have been quicker, possibly even easier. But then we would have become what we've always stood against, Alexander finished. Some victories aren't worth the cost. As their wedding approached, they formalized their commitment by establishing the Bennett Peterson Foundation, dedicated to supporting wellness initiatives in underserved communities. The foundation represented the synthesis of their complementary strengths: Rose's deep understanding of holistic well-being and Alexander's strategic approach to creating sustainable systems. Their story began to inspire others in unexpected ways. Young entrepreneurs sought their mentorship. Established business leaders reconsidered their approaches to corporate social responsibility, and couples navigating professional and personal relationships looked to them as models of partnership. The night before their wedding, they escaped the well-intentioned chaos of family preparations for a quiet walk along the same woodland path where Alexander had proposed. The Vermont autumn had painted the forest in vibrant shades of gold and crimson. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed in 3 years," Rose said, her arm linked with his as they walked beneath the canopy of colorful leaves. "From my tiny shop to all of this, the business, the foundation, us." Alexander stopped to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Do you know what I realized recently? That $1 billion contract, the one that brought us together, was the least valuable thing I've ever offered you." "How so?" she asked, curious. "Because what grew from it, our partnership, our love, the vision we're building together, is beyond any price I could name." His expression was earnest, stripped of the careful poise he showed to the rest of the world. "You could have taken that contract and given me an excellent return on investment. Instead, you've given me a reason to believe in something greater than success." The wedding took place on a clear October morning, with maple leaves creating a natural carpet of red and gold across the lawn of Elaine's Vermont home. Rose walked toward Alexander on her mother's arm, her simple dress catching autumn light, her face radiant with a happiness that needed no enhancement. The ceremony was intimate and personal, with vows they had written themselves. Promises not just of love and fidelity, but partnership and purpose. As they exchanged rings under an arch of autumn flowers, the gathered guests witnessed not just a union of two people, but the formalization of a bond that had already transformed both their lives in profound ways. "I promise to challenge you when you need challenging and support you when you need supporting," Alexander said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I promise to remember that our greatest asset is not what we build together, but who we become together." Rose's voice trembled slightly as she responded. "I promise to grow with you, to dream with you, and to remind you of what matters when the world tries to distract us. I promise that our partnership will always be rooted in honesty, compassion, and shared purpose." The celebration that followed reflected their values, elegant but unpretentious, with locally sourced food, sustainable decor, and donations to local wellness initiatives in lieu of extravagant favors. "They make sense together," Rose's sister remarked to Elaine as they watched the newlyweds greeting guests, "in a way that's hard to explain but impossible to miss." Elaine nodded, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "It's because they're not just in love with each other. They're in love with the life they're creating together. That's rare." In the years that followed, Rose and Alexander built upon the foundation they had established. Their business continued to thrive, expanding globally while maintaining the ethical standards and authentic approach that had defined it from the beginning. The Bennett Peterson Foundation grew in scope and impact, funding wellness centers in underserved communities and supporting research into natural healing methods. 3 years after their wedding, Rose gave birth to their daughter, Lily. The child seemed to embody the best of both parents, Alexander's analytical mind and Rose's intuitive compassion. "I never saw myself as a father," Alexander confessed one night as he gently rocked their daughter to sleep. "I thought I was too focused, too driven for family life." Rose smiled, watching them from the doorway. "And now I understand what my drive was always looking for," he replied softly.